So in the previous video, we created a satellite, just a simple new class with a couple of fields here. And one of the things we wanted to do was to add a type. So the type of the satellite can be Earth observation, for instance, and the special thing here is that it should be an enumeration. So what that means is that it should be a link to another table. And which is nice, because then you can, instead of saying that it's Earth observation, you just say it's the satellite type with identifier 2, for instance, which makes it a lot easier thereafter to index it, and also to make sure that we have not some people are writing it as Earth observation, otherwise other people with capital strings, for instance, but we have just a selected list of the values that there can be. So let's try to add it. So we've got our satellite here, and we need to add a type. So for now, what I always do, I just look at examples there. So there are a lot of examples that are happening already, and the license here from the data set is an excellent example. So we need to do exactly the same thing as what's happening here. So we say that there's a type identifier and a type. This should be a satellite type. We need to create that later. Import that. There should be a SQL model relationship. And now we have to create our satellite type. Oh, this should be light type identifier. So now we have to create a similar thing to the license. So let's do that. I'll just copy it here because that's normally easier than just creating it. All this data set stuff we're not interested in. We are though in the named relation. So named relation is just a thing with an identifier and name, which we can use. It's just a way to create an enumeration. So you can add some data there. It's a satellite type, so that's a table name. It is a satellite type. It's a table and a named relation, and we want to have a link to the satellites, which back populates the type. So simple, really. That's important, but let's make sure that we do the if type checking thing here, otherwise we get circular dependencies. So this is the satellite type. We created it, and we make use of existing ways to create it. So the named relation is just an existing thing, which makes it a bit easier to create something with an identifier and a name. And then we want to add a little bit more, namely the relationship configuration. So this is a part created by us to make it a bit easier to do serialization and deserialization. So we want to make sure that it's just a string for the end user, but that we are creating a separate database table. So we need some serialization and deserialization for that. Luckily, it's just very, very simple. So it's a single relationship. That means that this points to only one, not to a list of instances. And we can add an example here as well. So Earth observation. Okay, let's try it out. I think we have a decent chance that this should work. So let's try it out. Let's check first. There is something going wrong. In the satellite.py identify there's something about data sets. So probably I made a mistake somewhere. At least this should be type identifier, satellite type, should be type. This looks good. Maybe there's something about data set here. No. Let's try it again. Let's check what we changed. Did we change something in data set? Oh, it seems that I changed something in data set. Sorry for that. So let's there is a circular import. So we've got satellite, which imports the satellite type, and we've got satellite type, which imports the satellite. So this is just completely the wrong way around. So this type checking makes sure that there's no circular import, because if we were doing it like this, it would be a circular import, because then well, we cannot do that, but right now we're just using it as a type hint, and it's only used in type checking, so that should be fine. So now it runs, and now the nice thing should be that in our database it is a separate table. But if you're looking here, if you get it, it will just be a type Earth observation. But if we are looking in the database, describe satellite, we see it has a type identifier, which links to another table. So this is one of the things you can do. This is many-to-one relationship, where there's one satellite has a single type, and a single satellite type can have a lot of satellites. There can also be many-to-many relationships. So publication, as for instance, our data set has, for instance, a link to a publication. So one data set can have multiple publications, but one publication can have multiple data sets. So if that's the case, we need a separate table to link the data set and the publication. So there are a couple of examples there about that. It's also all described in our README, which you can find in the SRC directory. So that concludes the satellites. I hope this helps anybody who wants to create a new file. So one nice trick, or the thing I usually do, is instead of writing this all from myself, I just copy an existing thing and then delete everything I don't use, and then you should be it should be really quick. Thanks.